We can easily see how we should be subject to the teachings of Christ in His Word. But Paul says we're to be subject to the government. Really? Good morning. This is Pastor Ernie Lewis of the Blue Point Church in Sisney, Illinois, with your thoughts for Thursday. You know, most of us are a little wary or skeptical when it comes to believing the government, or most politicians in general, perhaps. Some have said the scariest words you'll ever hear are, "We are from the government and we are here to help you." We've come to believe that the majority of those in office today are actually here to help themselves. They don't really know what the average American is really facing. But Paul is reminding the church that we must be subject to those who are in the government and governing over us. In Romans chapter 12 and verse 22, he says, "Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God." Every citizen has to be subject to the power of governing over them, or we would live in anarchy. We would be a society that is lawless, that lives in open rebellion to everything. And we know that laws are made to protect man from others, or maybe even to protect us from ourselves if we can't control ourselves somewhat. We may want to rebel from some rules, thinking, this is not really for me. Let's say you're sitting at a stoplight, it's midnight, there is no one as far as you can see. Am I really required to sit here and wait until this thing turns green, or do I simply act as I wish? Paul says, "For there is no authority except from God." We have seen in some Old Testament passages where he put someone into power, even to judge his own people or take them away captive into a foreign land. We know that God has a sovereign hand in control of everything in this world. And he goes on to say, the authorities that exist are appointed by God. There may be times when we'd like to rebel against that idea or maybe even question it. He says in verse 2, "Whoever resists the ordinance of God brings judgment on himself." I mean, the fact remains in these verses, it says, "For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil." And we who are rebelling against them are going to bring some problems against ourselves. We have to give our allegiance to those who rule over us. We're also called to pray for those in authority today. That would certainly change our attitude about those who are ruling over us. It's also a matter of testimony that we obey the laws of the land as good citizens. He says in the next verses, "Render honor to whom honor is due, and we will live better within our country as a good citizen when we follow the rules."